Well, come the 90s, the Lakers were back in the playoffs again. However, this would mark the end of an era for Pat Riley. And the Lakers would lose to the Phoenix Suns in the Western Conference semis. And of course, I forgot to mention in '81, the Lakers lost to the Houston Rockets in the first round of the playoffs, but Houston lost to Boston that year. So there's a footnote right there. Because the Lakers have dominated the '80s, winning out of eight out of 10 conference titles, but the '90s would be a different story. In the '90s, it was almost like a decade of parity for the Lakers, but new teams were coming in. Of course, you had the Chicago Bulls dynasty and the Houston Rockets winning the middle two. So in '90, the Lakers lost to the Phoenix Suns. However, Phoenix would lose to the Portland Trail Blazers in the Western Finals. But Portland would end up losing to the Bad Boy Pistons again, as the Pistons won their second straight NBA title. Of course, led by John Salley and Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, the Worm. And of course, it was also the end of an era for Showtime because Kareem had retired. Magic was still there. So was Worthy. And yeah, it was the end of Showtime. Michael Cooper would hang it up. So, yeah, the 90s were lean for the Lakers. So were the 70s. And then, however, in 1991, the Lakers had one last dance that year. Yeah, Magic, of course, and Worthy would play in their last finals together. It would be Vlade Divac's only trip to the finals, led by new Laker coach Mike Dunleavy. However, they would lose to Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, along with Scottie Pippen. And yeah, the Bulls were stacked, led by future Laker coach Phil Jackson. Yeah, the Lakers would, after winning the opener, would lose the next four. And then Magic would call it a career as he was tested positive for the human immune virus. So, yeah, that marked the end. And the Lakers would not see another trip to the finals for almost a decade. But, yeah, the Lakers would have early playoff exits in '92 and '93. However, the Bulls would win their third straight championship. The Lakers would miss the playoffs in '94. Also, neither the Dodgers or the Angels would even make the playoffs during the '90s, except twice. The Dodgers made it to the division series in '95, but lost to the Reds and lost to the Braves in '96. But they would not win the World Series those years, respectively. But if not for the strike in '94, the Dodgers would have lost to the Expos in the division series, and the Expos would have won the World Series against the Yankees, if not for the strike. And of course, the '95 Lakers also lost in like the second round of the playoffs to the Spurs. Then they lost to the Utah Jazz in '96 and Houston in '97 as well. So the Lakers made it to the Western Finals in '98, but lost to the Jazz. However, the Bulls would have their third three-peat. So from '92 to '98, the Lakers would not lose to the eventual champions. However, in '99, the Lakers lost the semifinals to the San Antonio Spurs in the last game ever played at the Great Western Forum. And yeah, the Spurs would end up winning the NBA title in '99 over the New York Knicks, who were the 8th seed in the Western Conference, and the Eastern, I mean. So it is what it is. And after 3+ decades at the Forum in Inglewood, the Lakers would move to a new home in downtown LA called the Staples Center, which is more centrally located. And of course, the LA Kings, of course, made it to the Stanley Cup Finals in '93, but lost to the Montreal Canadiens. So the 90s wasn't really much going on in terms of LA sports teams. So we didn't really lose to the eventual champions until 99. But the 2000s would mark a new decade of success. Stay tuned.